my name is your dad, and in this video I'm gonna be painting a Harley Quinn. Let me introduce myself in a very brief second. I 3D print and paint things. Sometimes I'll make things, modify things, turn them into RC things. That is a lot of things to be things. Let's get into painting the Harley Quinn, and I'll explain a little bit more of the things in this video. Ciao! Here we go again with yet another 3D printed project on the table, and obviously with every project I always set out the parts to make sure that everything I'm going to use is printed accurately and come out exactly how I need it to be. With this particular project though, there were so many options, and I felt like I was going to print them all so that I could show you exactly how many parts and options there were available for this model. This model was sculpted by tsaber, and I'm going to leave a link for him in the description below. I might as well say it now, but this video was also sponsored by him as well. I use a range of 240 grit and 600 grit sandpaper to sand all the models pieces that have maybe any of the artifacts of printing on them, perhaps some of the support marks left over, and once I'm happy that everything is completely smooth, it's time for me to prime them all. Once I've primed everything, I'm going to start painting the model. I like to prime in black because this means that my shadows have already technically been taken care of. Now, not everything is going to want a black shadow, but if you miss a spot when you're using black as the undercoat, you normally wouldn't see it in most places. If you went too light, it's going to be harder to make sure that your shadows are painted as well. For this base, it's basically just a rock, and I used rock colors. That is an absolute lie. I used grays over the top of this. This pretty much just built up some kind of shape on top of the rock. By dry brushing all the edges, the paint that is left on your brush catches just the raised parts and makes it look like you know what you're doing. Even if you don't know what you're doing. Sometimes that is too desaturated and you need to add color back into that, and to do that I will spray washes over the top of that. I also painted back black onto all the parts that got additional dry brushing, and I then dry brush silver over the top of them to make them look like metal. I don't know what it is sticking out of this base, but I felt like it should probably be metal. When I was done with that, to unify everything and give it a little bit more of a tint, I sprayed a contrast paint over the top of it. And then it's time for me to tell you about the skin tones that I have absolutely fallen in love with lately. And this starts out with using a black as your primer, and then taking Pinkle, which is pink and purple, sort of in between of the two of them. Once you're done putting a zenithal of Pinkle over everything, I take a transparent red and I cover the black up with the transparent red. What this does is it turns the black into a reddish color, and the gap between where the fade is goes this awesome magenta. I don't know why this is a great way of doing it, but I really like this way, and it's been working really well for me recently. I then take the skin tone that I'm essentially going to want over the top of that, and I spray it over all the highlighted areas. You don't obviously want to leave any purple behind unless it's in the shadows. If it's in the shadow, leave the purple, because it will look like shadows and it will look great. It will look like there is volume and shape to your model. I then work my way up the highlights of those skin tones until I get the brightest points. I'm making the sprays a little bit smaller every time so that I'm not spraying the whole object with just the next color. Now we need to tint it. The reason we need to tint it is because the particular colors that I've chosen as skin tone colors are just so desaturated that you need to give it a little bit more color. So I use yellow, and I thin this down like 2 drops of yellow and a whole ink cup full of water. And then it's time to add the next skin tone, and that is this magic orcish flesh. I don't know why it's so good, but it's so good. I wish I could have a massive bottle of this to swim in, because it's a magic color for doing skin tones. For the black parts of this model, I'm going to spray a mixture of blue and black together to create some kind of a bluish grey highlight, and I'm going to spray that pretty much from the top of each part, and just to emulate the light hitting these objects and making them look like they are 3D. I'm also going to use a black and violet ink mix and spray this over all the dark and shadowed areas to create some more saturation. This video was sponsored by tsaber, and this is an independent sculptor who does some amazing sculpts independently. If you are interested in the Queen of Mayhem, a 3D printed statue, then I suggest you go check out his fundraiser. There will be a link for this in the description right now. The model is available as a bust, which is a standard version bust, and that starts at around $7, and it goes all the way up to having multiple switch outs, which will be $49 for the full set, which is 4 head switch outs, 4 belt switch outs, 4 baseball bat options, and I must just say that is a pretty sweet deal. If you are interested in this model, then I would definitely go check out the link in the description and go and show it some love. Now let's get back to painting the Queen of Mayhem. After laying a base coat over the hair, I then went and worked back on the boots. And on the boots, there are a couple of metallic pieces that I need to get done. If you know me and you've watched any of my videos, you know that I like to build my way up from the base up, especially if the model can be built that way. This helps me to know how far I'm getting along. So while I'm painting these shoelaces, I'm thinking to myself, I can just place these little feeties onto the base, and I'm starting to get somewhere. Because I've already done the skin tones of the thighs, it means that by placing them on, it's going to almost look like I'm starting to make progress on the model. Now, I didn't record myself painting her knees because I didn't want to show you that super secret technique. That is an absolute lie. You will see that when I paint her jacket later. For her pants, I needed to give it a little bit of a distinction around the leather bit on the side. I don't know why it's there. I am not a weapons user, so I don't actually know why you would need a leather pouch on the side, but she has it. So I gave it some distinction by dry brushing it and then adding a panel liner over the top. I then took a very nice brown and I painted that over the belt. Now, in order to get some shape to that, I'm going to take a wash like Acrylic's Earthshade and I'm going to spray it over the areas where I want it to be a little bit darker. Yes, this is going to overspray onto the black underneath. Don't worry about this. Stop worrying about it. Just let it happen, because you're not even going to notice it, but it is going to look like you added some depth to that belt and everyone's going to think you are magic. Now I can add the pants to my legs, and then I can add the stomach to my pants. This means that it is now time for me to start working on the jacket, and I'm going to start out by painting the arm first. For the jacket, it needs to be this reddish color. So to make this, because I use black as my primer, I'm going to spray white zenithal over that. I'm then going to take this transparent red from Vallejo and spray it over the top, because it goes almost a pinkish color over the white areas, especially if you allow it to be a little bit thinner. So you can actually build up some more contrast by adding a little bit more or a little bit less paint. I then went onto the body, which needed to be painted back to black in order for me to paint the red on top of this. So I used black from Vallejo and I carefully painted the entire jacket back to black. It was time to mask out the boobies, because I don't want to get any red on the boobies, otherwise it's going to look weird and everybody's going to say you got red on the boobies. Enough saying the word boobies, but you can see I zenithal that once it had dried, and then I just sprayed that transparent red over the top and then removed that, what is it called again? A liquid mask. And as you can see, I did this entire process so fast that the mask itself didn't even have time to properly dry in between. So if you rub this, it will come off. Don't worry about it. And if it doesn't, just leave it to dry and you can pick it off. I then took some dark silver and I went all over the model and painted all the rest of the metallic pieces. And by model, what I mean is just the torso, because I did each part individually. And then the exact same process for this belt as well. However, this time, because it's over the red, you would definitely notice the agrax, so I didn't spray it with any of that. And now seeing the end in sight, because I can see the model physically being built in front of my eyes, I am so much more excited to get this thing done and work on the next few pieces of completing this model. And that's going to be painting the portrait. I used the same transparent red over her lips. As you can see, this is a very versatile color because it just works. There's a lot of colors in this particular model that used it. I also dry brushed a little bit extra on top of her hair. I also sprayed a little bit of Yandan yellow into the shadows of her hair as well. And as you can see, I painted black first into her eyes, and then I used an off-white and painted the sclera of her eyes. Once I was done doing that, I took a dark blue and I painted the outside of the iris of her eyes. Once I was happy with the shape and size of these, I then took a lighter blue and painted that inside of that, and painted a black dot into that, and then a lovely white highlight to that piece of eyeball just before I called this model done. Normally I don't do this, but for this particular situation, I'm going to be selling this exact model. I'm not going to paint another one of these ever again. So if you're interested in buying this model, there will be a link for my website in the description, and you can give me a message and we can talk about the purchasing of this model. Hopefully you've managed to take something out of this video that might help you in the future. Of course, don't forget to check the link in the description if you're interested in purchasing one of these printed models for yourself. And also, make sure to leave a like and some words while you're down there. Share the video with your gran. And then if you want to support the channel, there is also a link to the Patreons, which also brings me around to, I would like to say a special thank you to the patrons who've supported me up until right now. And this week we got a new Patreon, Ian McIntosh. Thank you, my dude, for supporting me with the light of the Patreons to blind my eyeballs. Of course, we are at the part of the video where I need to tell you that if you didn't enjoy anything in this video, then you should have clicked off earlier. But if you're listening to this, then you should probably take this opportunity to very kindly off. And if I was you, maybe click the link in the description and purchase one of these printed models.